I've read this, and this is really bad. Women look for in a man is height.
Yeah.
And men actually care about the weight of the woman.
Men look for the 3 Fs, which is fit, friendly, and feminine. The women are looking for the 3 S's, 6 pack, 6 figures, 6 foot. 62% of divorces are initiated by women. Yeah. They don't want to work through the marriage. They would rather seek out a divorce, and go and buy a divorce birthday cake and make this big party of it. And I find that is really quite telling of our society today, again, that people are seeing relationships as very discardable, even when it comes to marriage. Menopause hits, and that's a lot of the time when women decide they no longer are interested in a sexual relationship anymore. They shut down. Something like 40-something% of women in the next 10 years are not going to end up having children. Did you know that?
Siobhan, welcome to the podcast.
So fun to be here. Thank you.
How do you feel being in the studio?
Yeah, well, after being a bit flustered of finding my way here, but now I'm chilled.
You're chill, and you look great and you look fab.
Thank you.
So today we are going to be talking about the D word.
Dating.
We're going to be talking about dating. So you are a professional matchmaker.
I am indeed, for my sins.
Set the scene for our audience. You match people.
Yeah.
How does that really work?
Yeah, so it's a lot of the time people think, I've got a website, and they assume that it's an app or something, but it's the old-fashioned way, I like to say, is, in person, offline. Mm-hmm. So it's really about getting to know people, on a deep and personal level, really getting to understand them, their personality, what makes them tick, their likes, their dislikes, their values, and ultimately then facilitating introductions with people who we think they're going to click with.
Sounds simple.
Yeah.
I bet it's not.
No.
What's the process really like? Where do you start?
So the first step is, having a chat over the phone. I think it's always nice to have a phone call to kind of break the ice. And, I like to kind of use that as an opportunity to get people to kind of open up a little bit about themselves. So I'm naturally a very curious person. So asking lots of questions about them and really getting a sense of where they're coming from, what lens they're actually looking at in regards to dating, how they've been dating up until this point, maybe see if there is any patterns to, who they've been choosing up until this point, kind of relationship history and all of that. So we kind of delve into that, obviously look at their professional and education background, as well as the relationship dating history as well. And then if that phone call feels like the conversation flows, then I usually invite them for an in-person meeting.
Okay.
And, drill down a little bit more into their requirements, their expectations of, how I can help versus how they've been kind of going about it themselves. And if I feel that I'm in a position to manage their expectations and introduce them, then we will offer a kind of membership. Not everyone can I offer a membership to, because at the end of it, some people I may feel that, we can't quite agree, or maybe the kind of deal breakers and things like that, So yeah, if it feels aligned, then, and the client wants to become, if the person wants to become a client, then we then start the process of, getting them to fill in some forms and things, writing up a bio, there's a photo shoot. Following that, once that's all sort of complete, they can expect to meet their first match within about a month of joining.
It's interesting how this is very much traditional matchmaking, and also as someone from a brown community, this is something that pretty much happens.
Yeah.
And I say in the brown community, but even when it comes to colleagues and friends, if you know someone who's been trying to date and he or she is a great catch, you probably just introduce them.
Yeah.
But then you are doing that when it's all about modern dating these days. It's about the dating apps, and then you're trying to do something a bit more traditional.
Yeah.
Can we maybe delve into your stats, like Cupid in the city?
Yeah.
What's the ratio of men to women? And for some reason, I kind of think I know where this might be leaning to.
Yeah.
But what's the ratio of women versus men, and also the age group?
Yeah. So I'll be completely honest and say that women definitely reach out a lot more than men do. I think naturally women are more forthcoming about getting support and help with things in their life. Whether that is going and seeing a life coach, getting a therapist, or seeing a matchmaker. So men generally kind of a bit more laid back in that they just expect that they're going to meet someone when the time is right. You know, although men are really struggling with loneliness and, you know, feeling that void, it doesn't always occur to them that there is this kind of support out there. And they kind of see it as a bit of a defeatist attitude in a way of like, okay, if I've got to get a matchmaker to help me, then, you know, is there something wrong with me? And I think that absolutely not. It's not about there being something wrong with you. I think today, you know, the lifestyles that we lead are very demanding. And a lot of people are feeling really burnt out from using the apps. You know, you have a demanding career, demanding social life, and all of these things going on in your life. The last thing you want to do as the people that come to us are very achievement focused, right? So the last thing you want to do is then go and sit on an app where you're trying to engage people who actually you have no real understanding of who they are. And it feels for a lot of people like a waste of time, and it doesn't feel as though they can feel that sense of achievement that they feel in other areas of their life. So I think that it does make perfect sense for someone to kind of be screening out matches for you, knowing that you're only going to meet people who are actually likely to be worth your time. And I think when it's explained to men in that way, it makes perfect sense to them, and they're just like, oh, it's just like an extension of having, you know, they're used to having PAs, so then they start to see it as, okay, it's like having a PA, but for my love life, and then they're sold on it, you know.
Right.
But I think that, yeah, initially, I definitely think it's like 65% women that contact us and 35% men. And I always say to anyone who's interested in being a client that, you know, we do actually have to hunt for the men more than we have to hunt for women, because women naturally gravitate. Even when it comes to the events, you know, men will leave things completely last minute, and women will be like organised, booking the tickets, bringing their friends, you know, and guys will literally, you know, come the day, if they've got nothing else on, they'll suddenly buy a ticket in the last hour. Like the last event I did was the first after about 5-6 years.
I saw that.
Yeah, and literally, I kid you not, on the last hour, there were 20 men that booked a ticket. And up until that point, we were really panicking there wouldn't be enough men. And then we stopped the women's tickets because we were like, oh no, we're going to end up with just loads of women and no men. And in fact, in the end, it ended up being we had more men than women because the men just left it totally last minute.
Okay, I do have many questions, and I haven't been writing down questions for the last few episodes because I've just been going with the flow. But today I do have questions because I actually asked my audience, and equally I was like, okay, it's amazing having a professional matchmaker in the room, so we can ask you the questions. It's not me, but I've read this, and this is really bad. But apparently, one of the main things that women look out for in a man is height.
Yeah.
And men actually care about the weight of the woman.
Yeah,
I'd
agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that completely. Yeah.
No way.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, there's a saying that went around. There was a YouTuber who's now deceased, but he was seen as having some quite controversial views, let's say. But I remember something that he did say, which did kind of stand out to me, and I kind of thought, yeah, actually, based on the conversations I've had with men over the years, I can kind of agree with this, in that men look for the 3 Fs, which is fit, friendly, and feminine.
Okay.
And that's kind of it. And the women are looking for, they call the 3 S's, 6 pack, 6 figures, 6 foot.
Not too sure how I feel about this, but I can. Interesting, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of, and I think, you know, a lot of women will say to me, obviously they're not looking necessarily for a 6-pack, but women do tend to be drawn to certain builds. I definitely see that a lot. The women will kind of, they either like the stockier guy or they like the kind of, you know, slender, more athletic kind of guy. It is kind of one or the other. And, you know, I do get sometimes men also the height thing. If they're like 6 foot, they sometimes do turn down clients who are like 5 to 5'2". They have a preference for over 5'2", even though I'll say to them, you know, she does like to wear her heels. But yeah, I think it's biologically, it's that sort of women look for a man who's a protector and a provider. So they feel as though if a man is tall, that he's going to be stronger and he's going to be able to kind of protect you. So it's kind of, it's psychological in a way, you know, and I think it's a shame because this means that a lot of guys are getting overlooked simply based on their height. And I'm a big advocate for, give the short guys a chance.
Give the short guys a chance. You mentioned the statistic there, which is basically going back to the breakdown of men and women within your agency, or the women who come to you for a matchmaking service. If we look at even research papers that I've sort of dug into before your arrival here today, the reality is that there are far more educated women than decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the Gender Equality Index, and apparently in 2010, there were the same number, or at least the same proportion of men and women going for tertiary education, so university. A decade later, that's more women than men.
Yeah.
Even the likes of House of Commons, there's so many research papers basically saying that there will be more women going for university education than men. Does that not make it even trickier for women?
Good question. I think the thing is, there are lots of jobs that are out there that men do. They're not really female-led jobs that women particularly wouldn't often want to go for. I'm thinking about, the guys in the building trade and, the blue-collar workers and all of those. So there's, the thing is, we obviously look at, we're here in Canary Wharf, it's looking at this has been the centre, of the country, is the financial sort of districts and all of that. But I think that there are so many other jobs in this country that really keep this country ticking over. And they are the guys that are literally fixing the train tracks and driving the buses and the trains and the building and all of these things. And
the reason I ask this is because, to your point, if now women are being able to provide for themselves and also provide for the family, and I'm probably not someone who believes in equality, but more equity. And I don't believe, and I know this will sound very controversial, I don't believe it has to be 50-50.
No.
And I'm sitting here as someone very outspoken, but I'm very happy for it to be 51-49, even when it comes to pay, even when it comes to taking responsibilities, or depending on the personality. Not everyone probably views it the same way. They probably want it to be more 50-50. I kind of do struggle with the fact that we do have many more women trying to take it more seriously and trying to date. And then there's this growing statistic about more educated women being able to provide for themselves. Does that make it even trickier? Are my kids going to struggle in 20 or 30 years?
No, definitely. I think that it means that the standards are being raised, that women have higher expectations. Women want a man that is in the same position as them. And this is the difference between men and women. A man can date a woman who's earning much less than him. He would, the guy that's in the city, banker, would date a woman who's working in Costa Coffee. That's the truth. But vice versa, not going to happen. And that's the trouble, and that's the difficulty, I think, that more educated, successful women are going to find. It's not a case that there's no longer a requirement for a man, but they're going to still be looking at that pool of men who are in the position that they are, which is usually, in a corporate sector, well educated, and they will be overlooking those guys who are, working in the less qualified type of positions. But I think that women should give those guys a chance too. I can think back to a client years ago who she was very used to dating. A lot of women that come to me are attracted to power. They want powerful men.
What's a powerful man?
Well, you work in the corporate world in the city and you see it all the time. The guys are in Bloomberg and all the rest of it. So, but we're talking about the guys who have influence. They have influence in their field. They're highly regarded. They have leadership abilities. They are intelligent, and they can command respect from others, from their peers. People see them as an authority in their field. All of these things, I think women definitely feel it's very attractive to women. We are attracted naturally, because also it shows stability in the sense that you feel quite safe with a guy like that. That he's always going to have work. That he's always going to be taking care of the bills and providing for a family, and can provide, a nice lifestyle as well. This day and age, we're very exposed to much more than we were 20, 30 years ago. We have social media, which is showing us lifestyles and that we can now sort of want to, attain to. Whereas 30 years ago, your comparison was what your parents did or your immediate family, But now we're looking at complete strangers' lives and we're going, oh, right, if they can have a lifestyle like that, then I want to have that.
Be able to.
And I think that also something which is making dating very difficult now is social media, because we're exposed to also so many people, so many good-looking people. Everybody on social media is pretty good-looking, whether that's naturally or through the filters. So we're kind of in this sense of reality where it's not, as I said, where it was just looking at your immediate surroundings of people in your life that influence you. We're now influenced by people all around the world, of all doing quite well for themselves, as it appears on the surface. And I think that's what's making committing to one person quite difficult, because there is often that idea that there's always something better out there. But, this client, as I say, she was very attracted to powerful men. She'd always dated maybe a little bit older than her as well, because of that reason, where she'd always quite look up to them. And I remember, I didn't successfully match her in the end, but she's been ever so grateful to the journey of, the coaching that came with it, the introductions that she got. She's referred friends of hers to me after, and we still remain friends. But she went and ended up with a guy who's an electrician, and they've got married. But, she's a powerful woman in herself. So she's been able to help him make a really successful business of that, And, he's not the typical university graduate, corporate guy that she thought that she needed. But she's incredibly happy now. So, I think... there's something to be said for that.
I like the honesty. Validating some of the research that I've come across, but also I'm sure this is a very obvious observation from men and women alike. And I do think the struggle with dating apps is that it does create this illusion that there's so many people out there, to your point, even better options out there. And I've heard stories of people leaving dates and literally just going to the tube or to the car and just about to swipe the next match.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
And I think the dating apps give you a sense of... There's a French saying that actually goes, un de perdu, 10 de retrouvé, which the English variation would be 1 lost, 10 found. And I'm like, wow, show me.
Yes, I like
really?
that.
Really? Do you think you're going to leave your house, you break up with someone, you're going to leave your house, you're going to have 10 men or women lined up waiting for you?
Well, this is it. And, even the divorce statistics today show that people are standing in front of their entire family and friends and saying, these vows that for better, for worse, they're going to be with this person to the day they die. But actually, even in the back of their mind, even when they're getting married, the fact that 52% of marriages in the UK end in divorce shows you that pretty much 1 in 2 people that are getting married are standing there going, well, if I'm not totally satisfied in a few years, I'll just divorce him.
At the time when they're taking the vows.
Of course, because that's what I'm saying. If you're really taking these vows in all seriousness and you're being truthful with those vows, then why are 1 in 2 marriages ending in divorce? And, this is another thing altogether, but I see a lot of coaches out there, ridiculing women who are having children outside of marriage and, all the rest of it, and saying, get the ring and blah, 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 blah. As though this is the thing to aim for, right? Get married and that's it. You never have to worry about being back in the dating game again. But yet, most divorces are also initiated by women. 62% of marriages, divorces are initiated by women. Yeah.
I thought it would be men, and not that this is a man bashing section.
No. In fact, I think it's 62%, or could even be slightly higher. Maybe 67%, actually. Yeah, it was closer to 70%.
But women?
Yeah. So it does kind of contradict itself, where women are, bashing men over the head to get married, and yet they don't want to work through the marriage. They would rather seek out a divorce, and go and buy a divorce birthday cake and make this big party of it. And I find that is really quite telling of our society today, again, that people are seeing relationships as very discardable, even when it comes to marriage.
Can I ask you, and maybe, as you said, this is a whole different conversation, why do you think there are many more women asking for a divorce than men? Because, if anything, and I'm sure you've probably read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and it talks about how men are very pragmatic, but think and somehow have a very independent thinking approach, while women want to be listened to. They're open communicators. And I would have thought that women would actually be the ones talking openly about what's not working in marriage, and men would rather take the silent option, and it would have been the other way around. Yeah,
you're right. I think women are talkers, but the problem is also often the delivery of the way that they're bringing up things to men, what I often observe is that women are very critical of men, very quick to criticise, but very slow to praise. And I think this is part of the problem. It's kind of, if there is a problem, you know, they're very quick to kind of to say it in a very critical way. But the man could be doing lots of amazing things, but that praise is not as forthcoming as the criticism is. And I think that often, you know, it's about the way that you communicate with a man. If you want to get something solved in your relationship, there is a way of going about it. Men are very, very sensitive to criticism, and they will usually shut down when they feel, you know, criticised. So I think that it's about, you know, taking some accountability as well, because often as women, you know, we are very emotional, and often, you know, that can be because of things like our hormones. You know, we've got to take that into account. We can't ignore the fact that, you know, our cycles do affect the way that we feel about things in that moment, you know. And I think that, of course, there has to be some compassion and understanding from the men in our lives with that. But also it's about educating them and letting them understand. You know, a lot of the time menopause hits, and that's a lot of the time when women decide they no longer are interested in a sexual relationship anymore. It completely affects their libido, and they shut down. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that a woman goes through during the menopause, you know, which really I think is a real shame if somebody decides to get divorced because they're going for the menopause and they don't know quite how to communicate that with their partner, their husband, and how to navigate, you know, the changes that occur after having a baby, you know, and the different dynamics that occur there in a relationship. It's like your relationship is never going to be just the same. It's always evolving, adapting to the different stages of life. And you need to, you know, always try to maintain that you're a team. And I think that a lot of the time people very much sort of start thinking in a quite selfish mentality. Even though they're in a marriage, they're still thinking about number one, and they're still thinking about their happiness. You know, but when you're in a marriage, you're thinking about, you know, how are we working together, and how can we kind of, you know, not go against each other, but actually turn inwards towards each other to make sure that we can actually come out stronger from this at the end.
I love that perspective. I actually read the book, and I think we talked about it very briefly on emails. I read the book from Logan Ury, How Not to Die Alone.
Oh, yeah.
And I know the title sounds very pathetic. It's actually not a pathetic book at all. And I do recommend it whether you're dating or in a marriage or in a relationship. And in that book, it talked about how before there used to be a sense of community around a couple. By that, I mean, if you needed to talk to someone, you had your best friend, you had your mom, you had your sibling. And now a lot of the expectations are being put on the partner. Yeah. The partner has to be this whole area of the best friend, the husband, the boyfriend, and all of the emotions actually get put, and all the emotions and the pressure get put onto that person. Yeah. Do you think your partner has to be your best friend?
I think naturally they become your best friend because you're spending more time with them than anybody else. You're taking your holidays with them. You know, you might take occasional girly trips, whatever, but most, you know, you're taking holidays with them. You're waking up together, you have breakfast together, you have dinner together. So, you know, I think as we're growing up, we always have our best friends and our girlies and stuff. But really, that person, you know, is your life in a way. You know, when you're raising a family together and everything, there's no one that's going to come closer to that real vulnerability that you show, that person that sees you, flaws and all, you know, every single day. I think even our best friends, we don't completely show ourselves in the way that we show ourselves in that type of relationship. So, yes, I think there is that element that, you know, for me, I'm a strong believer in having that strong foundation of a friendship. But I think it's also a tricky area, because what can happen in a relationship where you are really best friends and you don't have much of a social life and stuff outside of that, and you haven't got other strong friendships in your life, you can almost become like a brother-sister relationship, and it loses the sexual chemistry in the relationship.
Interesting.
So I think that it's very important to kind of try to still work on keeping that sexual tension and chemistry. Otherwise, it just becomes like roommates, you know, or brother and sister. And this is how also a lot of relationships can die.
And what if you have history? What if you've dated for years and years, like high school lovers, and you've known each other for 10, 15 years before you finally get married? Is there a risk there?
It's tricky because I know there's stories of people that have been dating for 10 years and then they get married and then they get divorced after a year because somehow the expectation changes, I think, when people get married. They suddenly, can be cool as boyfriend and girlfriend, but suddenly, oh, you're a wife now, you're a husband now, you should be acting this kind of way. I think if you start to have those expectations, then that's a risk, but I think that if you're just solidifying your commitment to one another, it's a new chapter. And I think you need to also have an open conversation about what you think those expectations are. Do you expect that person to change now that you're married? How is your life going to look different now than you did as a couple, a boyfriend and girlfriend to a married couple? And I think that that's important to discuss, what those expectations are, because, again, there's this pressure now to try to, get this guy to commit, get him to marry you. He should know within 6 months or, I don't think commitment is just about marriage. I think commitment is choosing each other every single day. And it's the feeling of safety and the feeling of, this is your person. That to me is commitment. I don't think this day and age, not everyone necessarily sees marriage as the true mark of commitment, as I say, especially given the statistics around divorce now. Marriage is not as sacred as it once was to most people in society. And I think that, commitment, it's like Goldie Hawn. She's been with, the actress Goldie Hawn.
Yeah, I do.
She's been with her partner for like 30, 40 years and they've just never got married, They love the relationship as it is and they're just like, we just don't need that to prove that we're committed to each other. And it's like, time will tell, time shows commitment. So I don't think necessarily because someone hasn't taken that step of marriage doesn't mean that they're not actually committed to you. And that's a controversial statement in itself, I think, because a lot of people do assume that it shows lack of commitment.
You remind me of Darwin, and I think it might have been from the book as well, where he said it's not the strongest species or the most intelligent one that survives, but it's actually the one that's most responsive to change.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And I do wonder, going back to my question, if you've been with someone for years and years and you're about to actually get married to the person or married or not, to actually commit to a long time with that person, I wonder how that relationship evolves over time.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of a long-term relationship, though. You get to see different versions of that person. And as long as you are both on a journey of growth, it's a beautiful thing. I think the trouble that happens is when, we are not the same person we were when we were 18 to 28 to 38, 48. We're evolving, our taste, our likes, our dislikes, the way that we pursue things in our lives and our passions may change. And I think as long as that partner is willing to kind of navigate that with us and also be willing to grow and expand themselves, then it's going to be a beautiful thing that you get to see these different versions of one another.
Because he or she changes too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of, you've almost got to keep falling in love again, You've got to kind of keep looking to find that love again and fall in love with that new version of that person. But then, as I say, for the relationships that fail, it's when that person, you've changed. And it's a problem for them because they're stuck in set in their ways. Yeah, it totally does. But it's something that gets said a lot. And this is also part of the breaking of relationship, even when it comes to, I was watching something last night about women that were trying to lose weight, like a comedy thing, going to a slimming club. And I remember like one of the women, she's married to a guy they own a fish and chip shop together. And she's won near enough won Slimmer of the Year. She's lost 5 stone in weight. And he didn't show up to the ceremony. And she was really upset, because she's like, this means so much to me. I've lost 5 stone. I really wanted you to be there. And he turned around and he was like, do you know what? I'm worried that you're changing. That, now that you've lost all this weight, you look so different, you're going to be maybe looking for somebody better than me now. Maybe I'm the guy that owns the chip shop's no good for you now. You're this new sort of gorgeous woman. surely you're going to want, this gorgeous, successful man, And of course she's like, oh, it's always been you, of course you're enough for me. Had to give him that reassurance. But, again, people are not always going to be as honest and vulnerable with you as that, as to say, actually, I'm feeling insecure about the fact that you're working out 5 times a week and you're looking incredible, and like you think your partner would appreciate that and be like, wow, look at my woman. But actually, sometimes it triggers people's insecurities when you're changing in that way.
Nothing about insecurity, because I'm going to ask you a question. But I actually went on a date years ago when I was single. I know.
Yeah.
We don't need to go into my details.
Yeah.
But I went on a date with someone very, very successful, and I didn't want to go on that date. And my friends were like, oh, yeah, you might have a good time. Turned out I had an amazing time. Spent nearly 4 or 5 hours chatting, which is a really long time for a first date.
Yeah.
And then in that conversation, his best friend is actually married to a girl that I know.
Yeah.
And then he said, in his words, I'm probably paraphrasing it, but this is exactly what he meant. He said, she outshines him, but in society, she lets him be the man. And then throughout the date, he asked me, would you let me be the man?
Yeah.
I love a powerful man.
Yeah.
But you don't ask. But you don't ask for me to let you be the man.
Yeah.
You assume your responsibility. You assume your role. And also, for me, that was like, that's just a sign of insecurity.
Yes.
And then as the day progressed, he asked me, are men intimidated by you? And I felt slightly offended. But also I'm like, generally, are there men who are intimidated by women? And is that a bad thing?
Yeah. Yeah, there are, definitely. But this is, coming back to the point of women today. A lot more women are educated, in powerful positions, in, well-paid positions. For men 30 years ago, it was a lot easier for them because they knew their role, they knew their place. They're the provider, And so they find a woman who's, he's willing to provide for her, and she's quite happy with that setup because it's like, okay, I just want to be home and have a family and have a house, and this guy can give me a house and he can take care of me. And this is almost really the reason for marriage, was kind of like the father was looking after the daughter to that point. Now this guy's taking over. He's now the sole, person who's responsible for her. And that's really what the whole idea of marriage was kind of about, giving that security of like, okay, I'm now looking after her. So now men are a little bit kind of like, well, what does a woman kind of need me for? This woman's clearly making her own money. Right? So he's like, what's my role here? You see? And I think that is where men sometimes feel a little bit off, particularly if they're very traditional kind of mindset. Traditional men generally are just looking for an opportunity to provide. And if they feel that a woman is not giving him that opportunity because it's this, Miss Independent kind of vibe that they're getting, like, I don't need you to pay for me, or, we're at dinner and he's like, let me pay for this. Like, no, let me. Or, I insist we go 50-50. He gets thrown off by that. And it's like, okay, so she doesn't want that. So what does she want? Because they almost don't. Men are very simple, honestly, and it's very much kind of, they're looking for those signals that they have got a woman who wants what they have to offer.
So
ultimately.
in that particular case, and just to be clear, I love being cared, I love being looked after, you want to pay for me, but I do like taking turns. But on a first date, I do expect to be, I would offer, I always offer.
But you like it if they...
But eventually, I do. Especially if I know, what job... Like, if I have an idea of your professional, or of your profession, like your background, it's nice. Yeah. It's a nice gesture. Yeah. But over time, I'll take turns happily. Yeah. But that's not an issue. But in this particular case, do you think that should have been a red flag to me, that he asked, would you let me be the man?
I would be curious as to what he meant by that. Okay. So I wouldn't say... I think this is the thing as well. Today, we're very easily kind of triggered, and we kind of we don't want to be controlled by a man, yeah? So that kind of language that he used probably was the wrong use of language, because it made you feel maybe that he's wanted to kind of be in control of you. Is that kind of how you felt, or...? I
just thought it was a sign of insecurity also, just the language about it, because eventually over time, and I say over time, over like the next few days, there were a lot of other signs about men versus women anyway. But anyway, we're probably giving that first date too much of importance.
Do you feel that it's a sort of misogynistic type of man?
I like.
Yeah. So
if I have a big problem with,
what do you think is a man being the man in a situation like that?
I think for me, going back to the point about being a provider, I do feel the financial and economic reality today, and going back to the point about education, right? My parents gave me such a wonderful education, and I don't mean just purely academic. I've been brought up to be an independent woman.
Yeah.
Because, yes, if I'm divorced in whatever years, I want to still be able to have financial security. And that's one thing I do want to teach to my kids as well.
Yeah.
So don't want to give that away. But it's all about working as a team. And I think I am someone who needs to be listened to. I like the emotional security. I like someone who's has that protective nature.
Yeah.
So that's definitely there.
Yeah.
But I think the impression sometimes as someone who's maybe confident tends to come with an impression that maybe you do intimidate people.
Yeah. And I think, that is something where men generally say they want a woman who's quite cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be agreeable, but cooperative. And I think that there's also that fine line between being opinionated, and I think that's a good trait, to speak your mind and to, you've got your intelligence. Why should you dumb yourself down just to have a man? Like, absolutely not. But it's when it borders on this quite like you're clashing with the guy, and I think that sometimes that's what happens also in the workplace. This can happen quite a lot. We're competing for the same roles as men, so sometimes there is that kind of clash of energies. So I think that that's something to note, that I think that sometimes it is about, okay, do I really need to make this point? Do I need to really argue this point? Is it really that bad? Or should I just kind of, just observe? Sometimes you need to just be more observant, actually let them kind of say what they really think and feel,
Right. I think over time I've kind of let go of a bit of my masculine energy and I've allowed my feminine energy to come up.
Yeah.
I just feel it's a nice thing.
I'm all about this.
Fight feminine energy.
No, it's a beautiful thing. Like, honestly, I think I shared with you that I did a whole coaching thing and the whole feminine energy, and I still haven't rolled my courses out yet. I'm trying to do that, make money while I sleep with the courses. That's going to happen soon enough. But it's, I'm all about that soft girl era, right? The whole soft life and all of that. And I think this is where a lot of women are almost going the other way now, where we've been so masculine, where we're just like constantly this hustle culture and we're trying to be equal with men. And then we're realizing actually there's some more benefits to not being completely equal with men, like actually recognizing that being the softer sex has its advantages too, and can get us ahead actually often quicker than trying to be the same approach as men.
I've got a burning question for you.
Yeah.
As a matchmaker, right? Like having this neutral view, and I know we've both got our own dating experiences, relationship and what is not, and taking maybe our biases away. As a matchmaker in London,
yeah,
who do you have more empathy for when you look at the dating scene today, men or women?
Oh, that's tough. I can't really say in terms of who I have more empathy for, because I'm a very empathetic person and I have empathy for each individual, and I can see it from both sides. I can see that both sides are struggling, for different reasons though. So it's like, as I say, the men are struggling for things like they're getting overlooked because they're not tall enough. Maybe they don't have good photos. Obviously professionally wise, etc. I mean, only 10% of men on the apps are actually getting replied to. So that's statistically true. Yeah. So I think that I have empathy for that these guys really want to be family men, and they're not getting anywhere ahead. And they're starting to get, really lonely, because women, we have our support groups and the women in our lives to talk to about our emotions and things. Men don't really have that either. So I feel like men are suffering more in silence with the way they're feeling about it. Women are also in pain because a lot of women are not also having their goal of having a family, by at a certain age and time is running out, and that's a very painful realization for a lot of women. Again, the statistics, something like 40-something% of women in the next 10 years are not going to end up having children. Did you know that?
I'm not surprised. I didn't know, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And it's not for, of course, there are women that have choose not to have children.
This one is out of choice, is what I'm hearing.
This is like, just not finding a man to have a child with. And I think that's really devastating, So I think both men and women really need support with this. And we are in a bit of a crisis when it comes to, people actually pairing up and starting families. So, yeah, I don't think the apps are helping. I really don't. I think they're making it worse. So we need to find some solution.
You've probably heard of this, the Maximiser versus the Satisficer concept.
No.
So the Satisficer would be someone who would have two choices.
Yeah.
They'll be happy. They'll pick one of the two. They'll be happy with that. The Maximiser goes, oh, that's amazing, but I can actually have better.
Yeah.
And in the book, How Not to Die Alone, there's actually an actual test, like based on your personality, what you're looking for in men and women and so on. You know me a bit by now.
You're the Maximiser.
I was actually talking about this to my colleagues, and we're like, I am the Maximiser.
Yeah.
And I gave this to a friend who sadly just came out from a relationship of 5 years. And we both took the test, and we both Maximized.
Oh, she's too. Oh.
Yeah, and apparently it's all about trying to be content. And I think the dating apps, again, create this illusion that there's so many people out there, you're juggling multiple people at the same time. And it is advisable to try and approach the mindset of a Satisficer. So thinking about this, I'm like, oh, yeah, that does make things tricky.
Yeah, it does. And people that do have that approach of this, don't want to settle, need to just wait for that next better thing. I've come across people like that in the past 15 years, and honestly, they're in their 40s now, still waiting for that perfect opportunity to come along. So I think it is, there has to come a point where you're actually going to go, this is good. This is good for me. And I think, for me, I think it's about who's, I saw like in the video the other day of this woman who's like highly anxious. I think a lot of us who are like this are quite highly anxious. Myself included, in terms of high functioning anxiety. A lot of us are really running because of this perfectionism and all of this. It's actually like our nervous system is not actually regulated. You need a guy that's good for your nervous system, honestly. So I see a video the other day of a woman who was like, I love this guy, like his BPM is always like 60 a minute, and like, like when she's stressed, you could just literally just lay on his chest and she's calm.
Okay.
And I honestly think this is a great thing for women to just find, is a calm man. Like that has been so great for me, because I've been with the guys who are like, I'm fiery, they're fiery, we're like, yeah, and it's this intensity and this pain, every time there's an argument, it's just like, oh, I can just remember the pain. I don't have that with this guy. I can't get an argument out of him if I tried. It's like, he just calms me. He just centers me. Yeah.
I just knowing your personality as well. Like, you're the feisty one, a fiery one, in a good way.
Yeah.
You need that calming power.
I do. I really do. And I never knew that I needed that until now. And especially now we've got 3 children, it can be chaos. And the fact that you've got someone who's just like grounds you all the time, like it for me, I think particularly, you're an ambitious woman, you're a go-getter, you go. You just need a guy that's calm.
My cousin, she lives in Dubai. She's an air hostess for Emirates. And years ago, I was in a very long relationship with someone I knew from the age of 17. We're not together anymore, but trust me, he's a gem of a person. He's going to make someone really lucky one day. I hope he does this. But I remember at that time we were not sure about our relationship. I was talking to my cousin in Dubai, and I said, yeah, but I'm not feeling the sparks anymore. And I don't want to get into like the details about the breakup. But then she say, why does it have to feel like butterflies all the time? Isn't that person meant to give you that calm, zen feeling? it doesn't have to be about fireworks, but it can just be a fireplace.
That's it. There's a video on TikTok as well about that. Yes, the fireplace. And I love that.
It made so much sense. Like, why does it have to be feisty, fiery all the time? I just need to feel calm and zen when I'm coming home to that person.
Yeah, you really do. It's just, it's no better feeling, actually, of just knowing this person is like, you know, your centre. It's like you are each other's centre of each other's world when you get to that point of, you know, being in that long-term commitment. And just feeling like whatever else is going on in the world, whatever things are chaos and crazy, like that person is just there as this like root, you know, just rooted. And it just gives you such a feeling of safety. And you knowing that person is just not, you know, my partner always says to me, like, I'm not going anywhere, I'm never going to leave you kind of thing. And I need to hear that because, you know, from my childhood and, you know, parents breaking up and all of that, it's like always that fear, you know, that's it. You're just going to leave me, you know. And I think when that person can always give you that reassurance and that feeling of like knowing deep down that actually, yeah, this person isn't going anywhere. They're a constant in my life. And I think
not everyone can afford a matchmaker.
No.
But we have you here.
Yeah.
So for my audience,
yeah,
thinking about the dating apps, because that's how people are meeting today. We've all probably watched Tinder Swindler.
Yeah.
And there's so many stories about men and women both ghosting each other. Happens. There's no dating etiquette. Talk to someone for a couple of months. You stop messaging them and so on. How do you spot red flags in someone?
Well, I think it's about consistency, you know, and I think that's a big one, you know. Again, in a relationship, that's really what you want to look for, someone that's consistent with you. I feel like if someone is, you know, 1 minute they're kind of messaging you all the time, then suddenly you don't hear from them for 3-4 days, there's nothing, then suddenly it's like all full on. I get that people are busy and there's a part of that in the early dating stage, you know, you've both got busy schedules and all the rest of it. But I think something to look for is that consistent and communication. So from the first offset, if they're like, you know, showering you with compliments, saying how much they've really fallen for you and buying you gifts and all that stuff, that's like, you know, not genuine. That's not, it has to be a natural progression.
Okay. And
feelings like that don't just, you know, as much as we all like to believe in love at first sight, no one falls in love at first sight. They might think you're amazing, think you're so super attractive, but I think that there's got to be like a build up where, you know, I think a natural sort of way would be maybe meeting up once a week for the first couple of weeks. But I do like it when a guy's on a first date and he says, what are you doing in 2 days' time or something, and follows up. I think that's a good thing. That's a good sign. Yeah. So trying to see you twice a week, something like that is bad. If that person literally wants to fill up all your time straight away, like that's a red flag, you know, because it's like very possessive kind of thing. I would say someone that's also kind of obviously, if they've been a little bit kind of sketchy about their past and things like that, you know, I think you want to just hear you don't want to hear like every little bit of detail about their ex, but you just want a little bit of what feels like an authentic response to you asking about relationship history stuff, you know. I think when someone sort of says their ex was toxic and all this a lot of the time,
speaks about them.
I think so. Yeah, I really kind of, even when I'm interviewing people for matchmaking and it's kind of like, you know, every single ex was a narcissist, I'm kind of like, there's a common denominator here. So, you know, that those sort of things, I think. I
do feel like, and again, men and women probably both, but I do feel like, from what I hear from my friends, from experiences, from all the different stories we would have heard about, men actually do tell you. They tell you that I don't want a relationship, but I'm very interested in you. I'm not ready to settle, but I don't mind getting to know you.
Yeah.
If you go on the dating apps, it actually asks you, what are you looking for?
Open to long term.
Open to long term. I don't mind it being like looking for a relationship or casual. But then there's this in between that says, don't know.
No.
Don't know.
That's a red flag.
No.
Yeah, that's no.
He's telling you. Listen to the first part of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I think though part of that, people put that because guy is going to get what he can. Do you know what I mean? So in between being in a relationship, if he's going to have someone to hook up with, he's going to take it, you know? But I think we as women need to raise that bar and not allow men just to be having these casual encounters with us and treating sex as a very, you know, casual thing. I don't think it's a casual thing. I think it is an exchange of energy. I think it's actually spiritual neglect to be going around just casually sleeping with people off. I mean, there's one app at the moment that apparently it's like Deliveroo for that.
You're joking?
No.
I heard Tinder is now being labelled as a sex app, but...
Well, no, it used to be. I mean, but now you hear people getting married that met on Tinder. You know, people are not ashamed to say they met on Tinder anymore. But this new one, shall I say what it's called?
Go on.
Called Field.
I've never heard of it. Not that I want to.
Yeah.
Try.
Well, interestingly, one of my colleagues that works with me in the matchmaking, she was told about it through a friend.
Wait. Siobhan, like you're actually saying it's for sex?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. As I say, they say it's delivery for sex. That's what they say. But it's for people who really want to explore their sexuality, who obviously have different sexual orientation. So a friend of mine who's also been doing some matchmaking with me, she decided to go on there out of curiosity because a friend had told her just to see what it's all about. But she was even sent an Excel sheet of different things if you've tried sexually, and guys are sort of sending you these sort of things as a screening process on there as well. So there's all kinds of apps out there now. Yeah.
You're joking. Why do you think we're struggling so much with dating? What is different versus the previous generation? Do you think people are unhappy?
Again,
I sound very defeatist saying it, but like generally, do you think people are unhappy?
I think there is a lot more people who are unhappy and unfulfilled now because, as I say, a lot of it is because of the internet and the social media and all of this, where we create this expectation of the type of life we should be living. We've got this FOMO. We think that we're missing out on so much. We're not living life to the fullest. You know, as I say, generation before, quite happy with a house, a home, a job, a family, and that's about it, and 1 or 2 holidays a year. Nowadays, we do have these lifestyles that are more demanding. Our attention is being pulled from every single direction. Our brains have not even developed for what we're going through right now. You know, we haven't our brains literally have not evolved for the way that, you know, we've got messages, social media, emails. It's like my dad said something to me the other day, which really kind of stood out to me. He said, you know, before we'd used to write a letter to someone and we'd have a response within about 2 weeks. We'd hear back from that letter. Now we send a message and that person expects a response immediately. And because it's like the other day, I had a few messages, people going, have I upset you because you haven't replied, you know, to my message on Facebook Messenger or something? And I was like, I genuinely haven't seen your message because I'm not checking my Facebook Messenger messages as much because I've got so many other messages to check, you know. But it's like, I feel like that's also part of it, you know. We have so much demanded of us, and I think it's just too much. I honestly do. I think we need to kind of cut down on the amount of communication and set more boundaries even with our time, and, you know, not feeling bad about not responding to people straight away. Or I just think that by cultivating really good relationships in our lives, good friendships, relationships with our families, you know, and focusing on those is really going to be the key to our happiness. But I think if we're always looking externally and comparing ourselves to other people, this is where we're just never going to be happy. We're never going to be satisfied because there's always going to be someone out there that's got a hotter, richer man or having a better lifestyle than us. There's always going to be that. The difference is 30 years ago, we didn't see what those people were doing unless we were like close to them and we actually knew them personally. And I think this is a big part of the problem.
I love how you touched on the external comparison and friendships. And I was thinking about this the other day, and this is one for the girlies and also for men, but generally more for the girlies because of what I hear from my circle of friends and cousins. I have one cousin who got engaged, and then she said she's not late 20s, and she said she got engaged, doesn't want to think about it. It really left her with a really sore experience. And generally, I'm talking to my friends, they're all like late 20s, early 30s, like in the age group. And I just feel like sometimes we do need to stop, pause, just give the grace and recognize that it takes a lot of strength to actually celebrate our friends. And I mean, genuinely celebrate our friends without an ounce of envy, not being fake. Celebrate them having found the love of their life, celebrating them being engaged or maybe having a baby. And I mean this irrespective of the route, like whether it's been an easy option, like, you know, they went on this first date and they've had an amazing chemistry, turns out a year later they're getting married, or whether that's been someone who's been struggling with, say, having a baby and now they've had to go for IVF. And deep down, this is maybe something you've been wanting for yourself, whether that's, you know, finding someone, having a baby. But I do feel like it takes a lot of strength, and we sometimes need to give ourselves that grace because, you know what, it makes you a good person. You're a good friend. You're a morally good person. And if it hasn't happened to you today, like, I do sincerely think that good things happen to good people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good karma, you know, to be giving out that good energy. Like, I must admit, I've never been a type of friend that's ever envious of anyone else. If anything, I kind of...
But we humans, right? Like, it might get to you. It's not envy, maybe it's not the word, but like, oh, I wish it happened to me. When you're that single friend, maybe at the dinner table, and everyone's got something to celebrate, it does hit you morally.
Oh, of course. Like, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I guess I've been fortunate in that by the time I was 29, I was already with my partner and, you know, having a family and stuff. So obviously, I haven't had to go through my 30s like feeling like, you know, I'm still here, I'm still single, because I was having a blast in my 20s. I was living in Dubai, I was partying it up, I came back.
What is a blase about all?
Yeah, I never had a moment where I was like, oh, I'm single. Like, honestly, I never did, because to be honest, I've never put that much pressure on dating. I'm not being like boastful here, but I've always had men around. I've never had a shortage of men that are interested, you know, because I've always been very, like, I've not been that picky as such. Like, I would date men of different ages, different heights, different backgrounds. I was just like, cool, this guy's interested in me, wants to take me out, sure, I'll go out. I was just like all for the fun of it.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? So, and I think that's what we need to remember sometimes is once we do get to a certain age, it all becomes very serious and we lose that fun and we lose that like easygoing and just like, do you know what I mean? And I feel like actually part of what got me there was just his carefree attitude. And I know it's hard to just maintain that because you are conscious of the fact that, you know, you've got goals and you don't want to waste your time. But I think that if you can remember what it was like to be that person who was carefree and fun and just was going out for the fun of it and letting guys take you out and have a good time and talking to a few guys and just like not taking any of it too seriously, that's probably going to be the thing that's going to get you in there eventually. Do you see what I mean? Because it's actually that pressure, that seriousness that a lot of the time is repelling men rather than actually attracting them to us. So you got to see yourself. You're the prize. They're going to be after you. They're going to want you. Like, you haven't got to push this forward. You haven't got to try to push for getting the things that you want. It's different than the work stuff.
I love this reminder for all the good to us because it does make me sad when if I do post something, I do see like I do get DMs about like I get the pressure talk at like 30. Like it is a real thing and I hear it from friends, I see it in my DMs, and I just feel like also after some time it's like, but who gave you the right to question whether I want to get married or whether I want to date? It's one thing me telling myself, oh, I wish this happened to me, 2 years ago. It's not happening, fine. But I never give someone else the right to say, oh, you should have done this by this age. No.
And that's it. And I think, there are those external pressures, there are family pressures, and I totally get that. And I think that, the answer to that has got to be, look, I'm meeting people. And I guess the right one's going to come along at some point, But it is harder these days. And those previous generations, you've got to have empathy for them as well, because they haven't lived the lifestyle that we live now. They don't understand how hard it is, because they're just like, oh, what's wrong with this boy that we put forward to you like last week? That's good enough. That would have been good enough for me when I was your age. But as I say, it's different now. You have a different lifestyle. They didn't have the career that you have, didn't have the education that you have. They haven't travelled in the way that you have, you know. And when you do all those things, it does open your mind. It does change your perspective on things. It does change the approach that you take to that person who you do see as your equal in life.
If not, the ultimate option is just to block them. I do block people now.
Yeah.
Like, I've blocked people from my life, like, not in an intentional way.
Yeah.
But, you know, people, and I know it's coming from a place of understanding, of caring. I just don't need to have to listen to this because, hey, you never know what I'm going through. You never know if I'm putting the pressure on myself. Yeah. Now, I need to have the pressure from you. No, thank you.
You're absolutely right. And I think there is that, like I've been had in the past, where sometimes you're literally around certain family members who you can feel your energy just go down when you're around them. And it's like you have to be aware of your own energy and what feels good and what doesn't. And if you literally notice that you're around certain family members or that's making you feel depressed, you absolutely need to protect your energy and you need to kind of limit the conversations that you're having with them. Absolutely.
Love all of this girly chat, gender neutral chat, whatever you want to call it. I want to end on a nice little rapid fire round.
Okay.
It should have been somewhat of an icebreaker, but we don't have any ice between us. So I'm going to try and find my questions. Okay. I do have only 4 questions, but maybe we might just briefly touch on them. First question, splitting bills on the first date. Is that an ick or not?
Yes, it's a never-ending conundrum, isn't it? Splitting bills. I think the man should definitely offer to pay for the first date. And I think as a woman, you should lean back and just let him do that and just be graceful about it and thank him. And that's the end of it.
Should a woman offer to pay?
No.
Never?
Not on the first date, no.
Really?
No. Unless, I say this unless.
I always offer to
you
pay.
Absolutely do not want to see this guy again. Then I think it's polite to say, it's been really nice, but honestly, I haven't felt a romantic spark this evening. I would like if we can split the bill.
My friend, who came out of that 5-year relationship, bless her, but she was saying how on the first date, she never even offered and she always got paid. And I, in the past, would always say, I've always offered to pay and I always had to pay because I'm like, yeah, sure, let's split the bill.
No.
And the few times I haven't had to pay, that's been the actual good days. I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
But, okay, interesting.
No.
So
I think it's etiquette, you know, end of the day. He's invited you out, has he not?
True.
Yeah. So
I've done my makeup, my nice outfit, I've taken my time.
Exactly. You know, that's not free. And, you know, the thing is, I think if you've then gone, look, I want, take me to this place, book Nobu, and, you know, this time, and then that's a little cheeky, you know. But if the guy has actually gone and said, this is where I want to take you, he's brought you there, you know, as long as you haven't taken the mickey and ordered like 50 oysters, you know, I think just let him pay.
You know what? Like, I know we need to get on to the second question, but I once went on a date with someone working for a hedge fund in Mayfair. Yeah. It was raining in Canary Wharf on that day. I had team drinks. I was like, okay, fine, I'll go, whatever. He hadn't booked a place, fine. Got there. It's raining, it was disgusting, fine. That was around like 7 p.m, right? Yeah. So met him, was a bit annoyed because it was raining. We didn't have a place booked. And then guess where he offered to take me?
Oh, I don't want to say McDonald's.
He suggested coffee at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Pret.
No.
And I actually started walking with him to Pret. I got in Pret. I'm like, what am I doing?
I'm fuming.
No joke. I walked away and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling it. I'm going to go home.
Yeah, good for you.
Like Pret. 7 p.m. coffee. Also Pret. Like, come on, I can pay you. I have the subscription.
And you had to come on the train to meet him as well. No, forget that. No.
And this is someone, I don't want to be shallow about, you know, dating criteria, like has to be working finance, whatever. But this was still someone working for a hedge fund. Like, come on.
Yeah. No, that's...
Standards. Second question. If you're not feeling the chemistry, say you didn't feel the chemistry on the first date.
Yeah.
Should you still go for a second date?
I think so. I think people are nervous on the first date. I don't think they're totally relaxed with you. I think the chemistry comes when you're a bit more relaxed with each other. So I definitely would give it another go.
You would? Okay. Third question. Is there something as if you know, you know?
Yes, but it doesn't mean on the first date.
How many dates would you give it on average?
Oh, I wouldn't give it dates. I think for me, it's that feeling that comes with getting to know someone. So it depends how long it takes you to feel that you can actually get to know someone, you know. And for me, I don't feel like I know someone on the first few dates. It's all kind of a performance. You know, dates are very performative. So I think that's the tricky thing. You know, even if I think about, you know, with my partner, to be honest, because we were friends first, we kind of skipped the going out on dates and kind of just sort of was in each other's homes. And I got to see who he was a lot more. He was cooking for me and, you know, I just felt like a lot more comfortable, and it was much easier to actually have that feeling because of... So I think you almost need to see them at home. I think you can't just base it on, oh, you've been out for a few drinks and a few nice places and out in public. You need to see them behind closed doors.
See them at home.
Yeah.
Question. As a woman, if the guy hasn't reached out, should we follow up?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So it depends on the intention behind following up. So if your intention is kind of like, you know, when are we meeting again? I would say no, because I think that's your masculine energy. But if you're just literally like, hey, how are you? Just thinking of you and I'm just out tonight having fun and you're just being flirty, yeah, absolutely.
And then last question. If you've been talking to a guy for 4 or 5 months, sending you flowers, everything's going amazingly well, and then suddenly he's not feeling it, but then you do have a chat and then he says, oh, well, no, I do want to continue, but I've got a lot of things going on, like work pressure and so on. Couple of days later, the messages start fizzling out, hasn't messaged you for a week, 2 weeks. Do you follow up or let it go? Assuming you've had that detailed, long chat already.
During that chat, did you convey that you were concerned about the lack of communication?
Let's say yes.
Okay. So it's been a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's no harm in saying a friendly message, as I said again, but not one that's kind of... I think the thing is as well, sometimes we can come with the energy of slight annoyance when we're actually reaching out at that point. So as long as you're in the energy of like, actually have no major expectations of the outcome of this, I'm just kind of actually curious to see how he's doing, I think it's fine.
And finally, ghosting.
What about it?
What if you're the one trying to make a decision, I'm not seeing the person, and you're wondering whether to not hurt them and just ghost them?
Yeah.
Is that forgiven?
No, I don't think you should ever ghost someone. I think, you know, it depends. Okay, it depends what you consider ghosting. So ghosting is kind of someone messages you and you don't ever reply. That's what I think is ghosting. If it's like, you know, it's fizzled out and you just both haven't contacted them, that's fine. You don't need to give a explanation as to the fact that you're never going to contact them again. But I think that it's courteous to at least respond to the last message and just, you know, and just say, yep, you know, actually, sorry I didn't get back to you, but actually I don't think that I'm going to continue with this.
Love your pearls of wisdom. Well, Siobhan, thank you so much. How can we end this podcast? What will be your one message about love? Something positive for everyone.
Don't give up hope. That's it.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.